been asked by many people to try and elaborate on the story I had on a specific day, September 2001, 9/11. Everyone knows where they were 9/11. Probably one of the most horrific days that's ever happened in my lifetime anyway. So I have a little bit of a story of what happened to me that day, which I want to share with you. So we'll start off where, for those who know, some may know, some may not. I was working in New Jersey at the time, living and working in New Jersey. I was working just off Route 22 in a place called Hillside. Our warehouse and offices kind of almost on the higher levels. You could see close to Manhattan. Some parts of Manhattan were on display. If you came out the road where we worked, you could see the Trade Center. So as it started, I was in the office as normal, early on was it a Tuesday, Mark? I can't remember what day it was. Was it a Tuesday? Early in the morning, 9/11. And one of my routines was to go and speak to the dispatch drivers who were doing our pickups, deliveries, regular sort of thing. We had a fleet of trucks, probably in the region of about 20 trucks in the area, covering most part of the tri-state area. And majority of the drivers were of Spanish or Hispanic origin, came from Mexico, Central America, Nicaragua, El Salvador, and places like that, Honduras. So I would go walking through the warehouse to go, it was a probably 200,000 square foot warehouse, to give you a picture and idea. Go walking through the warehouse to go to where the dispatch office was at the back of the warehouse. As I'm on the way down, I get a page over the top of the tannoy that comes through that says, "Darren, can you pick up line 1? Gainer's on the phone for you, your wife's on the phone." And I thought it'd just be an issue. Can you pick up some bread and milk, maybe some shopping on the way home tonight? We had a young baby at the time. Declan was only 1 year old. So I just ignored it and carried on walking. When I get into the dispatcher's office, I could hear it come across again. "Darren, pick up line 1. It wasn't certain that was, in my mind, something that was that important. So I go into the dispatcher's office and I'm talking to our dispatcher about what the plans were for the day, what drivers had on, who was doing what, who was where, just different things that you would do, general chit chat. And then we had a distress call come over the radio. The drivers were all on radios, so the distress call come in and it was broken English, very very bad broken English, of something was on fire. Now I thought he said his van was on fire or his truck was on fire. So I said to Vinny, who was our dispatcher, I said, "Vinny," he said, his van's on fire. He said, no, he said something about the big building being on fire. And all I could get then, all I heard from there was big building. And I was like, something's weird, you know. So I go back out, I said, "I'll come back in a bit." I said, "Calm him down." I said, "I'll come back and we'll have the daily chat which we had." So I go walking back up to the main office at the front of the building. As I'm walking through the building, it's paging through again. "Darren, it's urgent, your wife's on the phone." So I thought, that's crazy. So when I got back to the front of the office, people were sort of like looking around a little bit bemused. And so I called Gaynor and she said to me, "A plane's hit the Trade Center." So I said, "What?" Like everyone else would probably feel the same way. Didn't have any access to any TV or radio at the time. No one thought of this, what was going on, you know, because I'm sure the same applies to everybody out there. So what happened was, she said, "A plane's at the Trade Center." So I was working in the airline industry or air freight industry, and we were given these model planes that were like everything from a Boeing 737 all the way up to a Boeing 747 or an Airbus or whatever it was, and they were like little model planes about this big, and I had them on a shelf in my office. So we were talking, and then I said, "Let's see if we can get a TV sort of thing." So one guy had like a tiny little TV radio thing, so we put it on, and the only channel we could get was like a Spanish speaking channel. It was like, we were downstairs, we were like in a downstairs office, like almost like a basement office, so the reception wasn't great, but the only channel we could really get anything from was the Spanish speaking. So lucky for us, we had a couple of guys who worked with us from Colombia who spoke Spanish. So he's trying to translate to us. So they're saying like a 767's hit the Trade Center. So I said, "A 767? So I pulled one of these model aircraft and I went, "That's a 767, that's never going to hit the Trade Center by accident." I said, "That's a serious accident." By this time, everyone thought it was a general accident. No one really knew what story was going on. So then, as we're watching the things unfold, the second plane hits the Trade Center. And I was like, "Oh my God," you know, it's like, so I'm back on the phone with Gaynor saying, "Just something bad's happening." I said, "It's stay where you are, don't go out anywhere, you know, just stay home and just sit tight until we find out what's going on." She was asking me, "Are you coming home?" So I said, I'm not going to come home yet because I want to make sure everyone in the office and the drivers and everyone that works with us are safe and they're out of the area, because we had drivers in Manhattan at the time. Straight away back down to the dispatch office, speaking to the dispatcher, making sure that all the drivers are all accounted for, all safe, everyone's out of the area, sort of thing, which they were out, come out of the area. Managed to sort of like go either north into North Manhattan or cross back over the bridges back into New Jersey or over into Queens. And it was a situation where everyone was a little bit panicked because it was right on our doorstep almost. It was very, very close to where we were. Then all of a sudden, things start going through your mind and you start panicking a little bit because now you're hearing of other planes that may have gone down. Then the Pentagon news sort of like comes in. But by this time, prior to the Pentagon or Flight 93 or anything like that, there was a little restaurant just at the top of the street where we was on Route 22. For those who are from New Jersey and that area, you'll know Tiffanys, just on Route 22. So I used to frequent Tiffanys quite a bit. I've got a feeling maybe Tony Siragusa was one of the owners there. I'm not sure if he was or if he was in there regular, but I remember seeing Tony in there, or the Goose, and I think he had some kind of ownership of it at the time. So I called them up and I said, "Are you open?" They knew it was me, obviously, through my accent. So they said, "We are now, if you want to come down." It's the only place I could think of that had TVs. And rather than just jump in my car and drive home, which was probably a good 45 minutes to an hour's drive down to the south, down to the Jersey Shore area, I thought I'll just stay and local and make sure everyone's okay whilst watching it on TV, whilst watching it unfold. So I will go down to Tiffanys. I'm the only one in there. They open the door for me. I go in, I have a beer, and I'm watching it unfold on TV. And it's just devastating. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows the story, what went on there. And it was just one of them where you're thinking, what do I do? And I think for the first time in my life, I didn't know what to do, what was best for me and what was best for my family. So it kind of like sent my head into a little bit of a spin of what's best, and shall I go home? Shall I stay here? Shall I go back to the office? Can I give anyone any help? There's nothing I could do. The professionals are all on the case. I'm sat there. So I decided after probably an hour or so of watching it, and it sort of like all piped down a little bit, calmed down as far as flights were all grounded. Everything seemed to be a little bit more stable than what was going on. I decided I was going to drive home. So as I'm driving down, I'm going out the 22, I'm onto the Parkway. As you're coming across the Parkway, if you look to your left, heading south down the Parkway, the lower Manhattan's in the distance, and all I could see was the smoke bellowing, and it was one of the most horrific sort of like visuals you will ever see, because Manhattan to me was always a boyhood dream to go and live in Manhattan or go and live in New York or the New York area, because it had the most fascinating skyline. It was the original, in my mind, the original skyline, the original big city, the biggest city. If, like Frank Sinatra always said, if you can make it anywhere, you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. And that's one of them things that always stuck in my mind. New York was for me. And to see this happening was like a real tragic, like tear in your eye moment. Not just because of what's happened, but because of what's happened to New York City. Anyway, I drive home, looking from the distance, very eerie. All the toll booths are open, it's all flashing amber to go through, and you know, the roads were very, very quiet, which is very eerie because it's unheard of. I mean, we've probably seen it more in COVID times as well now, but prior to that, you imagine the Parkway, linking Jersey into Manhattan and South New Jersey, how busy it's always been. Just for cars only, for those that don't know, no trucks on the Parkway, and it was always busy, always. I'm driving down the Parkway with me and maybe one or two other cars on the Parkway, through Raritan, where busiest points, Woodbridge, all around there. And I got home, and you realise you're in the safety now of your own home. You've got your family with you. We're glued to the TV again, watching what's developing, all the sad things that happen in Manhattan. And then one thing comes to my mind, which it brings it home a little bit more closer. About 2 weeks prior to 9/11, or maybe more, it was about a month before 9/11. I get a message. Now, I was in the logistics industry, and one of the people who works in Pace University wanted me to be a lecturer for international transportation. So they said, we want you to come down and do a few lectures on international transportation with with the students of whatever they were studying. I'm not sure what they were studying. I agreed to it. We agreed a package, and then our attorney spoke to our attorney, and he said to me, "You can't do this." He said, because your visa only allows you to work for one company, which was the company we had at the time in New Jersey. So I had to decline them. So September the 10th, I got an invite to go to a British Airways function in Manhattan. And while I was there, I actually spoke to the people at Pace and said, I can't accept it. I won't be able to start tomorrow because, or I won't be able to do the lecture tomorrow because my attorneys told me that I can't work for anyone else other than the company I was working for. So we went into Windows of the World in the Trade Centre. We had some food, we had some drinks, and then we left and went to, I think it was like the ESPN Sports Centre. But as we drove in, we hired a limo, and as we drove in, I said to me mate, look at this skyline. It's the best skyline you'll ever see anywhere in the world. There's some that compare with it, like Hong Kong's of the world and places like Singapore's. Some people have got nice skylines now, more modern, but at the time, nowhere beat New York. It was iconic. Everybody recognised New York from the Trade Centre, from the Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building, and it's just unique. And I said, you're not going to see it anywhere. So we spent time in the windows of the world on 9/10, left, got in a limo, went home, was due to start Pace University on 9/11, wasn't able to start from a visa issue, and then the rest developed into what it was. Pace University were on something like either the 34th floor or the 24th floor, something like that, so it would probably not have affected me as far as getting out for what some of the people went through, but very, very close to, number one, being right there, but in the same time, very close to being just across the water and seeing what was unfolding. There were some stories that I'd never even heard of until recently, which was like the boat lift, some of the fireman stories that came out. There was no phones as such with cameras on them at the time, back in 2001, which were, if it was today, you'd have footage, you'd have so much footage, but when you look at it now, there's not that much footage that was available. Television cameras, some people had the handhelds, but what it come down to is the story I was elaborating on. It was very close personally for me to either be there or was across the water, very close. And a lot of people were asking what the story was. I had friends who were there. One guy was on something like the 90th plus floor. He was a computer developer or a programmer. Left something in his car, so went down to get it out of his car. As he got to the bottom floor, as he walked out the building to go to his car, the first plane hit. So he's very lucky. You hear stories like this all the time. There's many stories about people. We tried to get hold of my mate who was the guy who walked out because we knew he was there. I think we eventually got hold of him at something like 5 p.m. at night, and he just managed to cross the bridge, again covered in dust. One of them people that you see cross one of the bridges, walked across one of the bridges, managed to get a lift back into New Jersey. There was people that lived in our area that were affected by it. Some people lost their lives that we not knew as far as knew of, but didn't know them as far as they weren't family friends, but we knew who they were because they were neighbours or close, living in the same sort of area. And then stories come out that people that are their friends, and it was just one of them things where it really changed the world, and it really changed the world for me to understand that you need to know what's going on. And since that day, I've always had a TV in my office, as daft as it sounds, because you want to know what's going on and what's happening straight as it happens. And now when Gaynor does call me, I do pick up the phone. That's my story of 9/11. Again, very close. People were asking just me to elaborate on the story. That's what it is. If you want to know more, let me know. Hope you enjoyed that little story, and I'll see you on the next one.